1. HELENA Andersson. It was the summer of 1992. Both HELENA Andersson, 22, and her big sister, Ulrika, had temporarily moved back to their parents' home in Mariestad. On Saturday evening, June 13th, they went to a friend's party in Torrebora, just under 2 miles from Mariestad. The party was successful. The company never wanted it to end, so they went to Mariestad, where they continued the evening at the city hotel. Ulrika decided to go home, but HELENA stayed a little longer. The next morning, Ulrika enters HELENA's room. The bed is untouched and the light is still on. Ulrika's first thought is that HELENA may have stayed at her friend's house, but a few hours passed and she hadn't returned home. Ulrika becomes worried and calls her friends, but no one knows where she is. The police are called. After searching, the police discover HELENA's shoes and rings, which were found on a bicycle path near the home. The police also found fresh car trails. A woman said she heard screaming near HELENA's home. Witnesses also heard a car drive down from the site at high speeds around the same time as someone else reported hearing the screams. Thousands of people have participated in the search for HELENA, and the police have put down a lot of resources to solve the case, but so far they have not been able to find HELENA or her body. 2. The Atlas Vampire. Lili Lindeström was a prostitute living in the Atlas neighborhood in Stockholm, Sweden in the 1930s. The 32-year-old entertained clients in her small, dingy apartment and spent the day of May 4th, 1932, working. That evening, Lili dropped into her neighbor Minnie's apartment in search of condoms before returning to her own home. On May 7th, 1932, she was found dead in her apartment after her friend Minnie alerted the police that she had been missing. She had been dead for 2 to 3 days before police broke into her apartment. She had suffered blunt force trauma to her head. Lili was discovered naked, face down on her bed. Her clothes were found folded on a chair next to the bed. According to reports, sexual activity had taken place, with a condom found to still be protruding from her backside. Nothing was taken from the house. Furthermore, saliva was found on her neck and other areas of the body. Most disturbingly, almost all of her blood had been deliberately drained from her body. A blood-stained gravy ladle was found near her body, and it is believed that the instrument was used by the killer to drink Lili's blood. Due to this, the unknown killer was labeled as the Atlas Vampire. Up to 9 suspects were questioned about the murder. Most of them were her clients, but they were all ruled out as the perpetrator. After that, the case went completely cold, with not a single suspect or any other trace of the Atlas Vampire ever turning up. The murder remains unsolved to this day. 3. Catalin da Costa. Catalin da Costa was last seen on June 10, 1984. She was a heroin addict and a prostitute who worked in what used to be a very well-known area for prostitution, Malmskillesgatan, Stockholm. When Catalin's mom hadn't heard from her in a few days, she grew concerned and notified the police. On July 18, 1984, some of Catalin's remains were found near the Department of Forensic Medicine at the Karolinska Institute. Then, on August the 7th, more remains were found less than a mile away from the first location at Carlsberg's Beach in Solna. Her head, internal organs, one breast, and genitalia have never been found. She had to be identified through fingerprints. A cause of death has never been able to be determined because of the missing body parts. A man by the name of T. Tarm, who worked at the Department of Forensic Medicine near where the body parts were found, was initially suspected. He was known for frequenting prostitutes, with one alleging that Harm had been violent to her. Additionally, Harm's first wife had died in a potentially suspicious way. It was actually her father who tipped off police to Harm's potential involvement. In December 1984, he was arrested for the murder of Katalin and his first wife. Days later, he was released with no charges being brought against him. In the meantime, a general practitioner named Thomas Algen was accused of sexually abusing his 17-month-old daughter by his wife. When those claims were unsubstantiated, she then alleged her daughter had made comments suggesting that she had seen Katalin's dismemberment. A child psychiatrist and psychologist found the claims of the then 2.5-year-old to be credible. Harm and Algen had previously worked together and vaguely knew each other. During the latter stages of the pretrial investigation in the autumn of 1987, a married couple who owned a photo shop close to the Karolinska Institute contacted the police. They said that years before, in the summer of 1984, they had developed and processed prints of a film roll that contained horrible images of a body cut into pieces. They and their employees had apparently been very upset by these pictures, they said, but didn't notify the police of their existence. The owners told police that the customers, 2 young men, had claimed that the pictures were part of a top-secret investigation. The Photoshop owners were shown lineups with the 2 doctors, and they identified Algen and, to a lesser extent, Harm. Harm and Algen were arrested and brought to trial in 1987. At the end of the murder trial, the jury returned a guilty verdict at the district court. However, before the verdict could be confirmed by the judge, a number of jurors gave interviews to the press. As a result, the High Court overturned the conviction and ruled that the 2 doctors were free to go. A campaign was led by a journalist who knew Katalin, and a second trial was ordered. This time, Harm and Algen were acquitted of the murder. The judge did believe that Harm and Algen were guilty of the dismemberment, but by that time the statute of limitations on the dismemberment had passed, leaving him unable to sentence them for that crime. The statute of limitations for the murder passed in 2010. The case officially remains unsolved. 4. Kim Wall. Kim Wall, 30, was a journalist from Sweden who had been missing since August 10, 2017. She was last seen on a homemade submarine belonging to Danish inventor Peter Madsen. A respected freelance reporter, Kim attended the Columbia Graduate School of Journalism and had spent some time in New York and China writing for several international publications. She was researching for a feature on Mr. Madsen, who built the 40-ton submarine after raising money through online crowdfunding in 2008. Kim Wall met with Peter Madsen at his Copenhagen submarine dock at around 7 p.m. on Thursday, August 10th, where she was pictured boarding the Nautilus and smiling, but her boyfriend reported her missing at 2:30 a.m. the following morning after she failed to return home. A rescue operation was mounted over fears the sub, which was not equipped with tracking devices, may have gotten into difficulty in the short channel between Copenhagen and Sweden. A merchant ship claimed to have come within 30 meters of the sub at midnight just miles from where it had set off, and a lighthouse had a confirmed sighting of the sub at 10:30 a.m. that morning. Half an hour later, at 11 a.m., the submarine sank, which police said was allegedly a consequence of a deliberate act. Peter Madsen was rescued from Koh Bay, the body of water where the submarine was found, but there was no sign of Kim whatsoever. Madsen told rescuers there was a problem with the vessel and he was unable to close a hatch, leading it to flooding and sinking in about 7 meters of water. but police salvaged the submarine from the icy waters of Kobe and inspected it. They found it appeared to have been sabotaged, and they found blood inside. Police secured Wall's hairbrush and toothbrush, and the DNA from the items matched blood they'd found on the submarine. When questioned, Madsen initially insisted that the journalist had safely disembarked the submarine prior to its sinking, claiming he'd dropped Kim off after dark at the HELENA restaurant, which was owned and run by her boyfriend, Bo Peterson. Peterson, however, doubted that his girlfriend had ever reached the restaurant and told Sweden's Express newspaper that he had handed over all CCTV footage from the cameras that surrounded the restaurant to police. Despite Mr. Madsen's insistence that he didn't know what happened to Kim, police suspicion grew, and he was held on charges of negligent manslaughter. But shortly after, Madsen changed his story and said that Miss Wall died as a result of an accident on board the submarine when a hatch unexpectedly collapsed and hit her on the head while she was climbing up the stairs in the submarine's tower. Madsen revealed he'd buried her body at sea. On August 21st, a naked female torso washed ashore in southern Copenhagen. It was weighed down with metal and had been punctured in an apparent attempt to stop air and gases from causing it to rise to the surface. DNA tests showed it was the torso of Kim Wall. The body had not only been decapitated, but it was also missing its arms and legs, leading many to question why she would have been so badly mutilated if her death had resulted from an accident. Police are analyzing the submarine wreckage and have called on anyone who has taken a trip of Madsen's boat before to come forward. The overall investigation is taking place behind closed doors, so details of Mr. Madsen's testimony and the search are scarce. In a pre-trial review for Madsen, it was found that he had a hard drive in his workshop containing warped videos of women being tortured, dismembered, and burned. Prosecutors believe Madsen, a married 46-year-old, brutalized and killed her to feed a sick sexual fantasy. Madsen said the hard drive didn't belong to him, as he explained other people had access to the workshop. A cause of death has not been established, but an autopsy showed 15 mutilation wounds to Kim's genitals and chest inflicted around or shortly after her death. DNA tests from Madsen's nails, face, and also his neck show a match with Kim's. The court ordered Madsen be detained for another 4 months as investigations continue. There are still many questions surrounding what actually happened on the submarine for Kim Wall's life to have come to such a premature end, and the answers will hopefully come to light during a trial, although a date will not be set until police complete their investigation and their hunt for the remaining missing body parts. 5. The disappearance of Guy Karlsson, Jan Olof Dahlsjö, Kjell Johansson, and Hybner Lundqvist. The port city of Gothenburg has always been Sweden's gateway to the world. This was especially true in the decades following World War II, when the rebuilding of Europe created a huge demand for Swedish wood, steel, and industry products. Guy Karlsson, 22, Jan Olof Dahlsjö, 21, and Kjell Johansson, 16, were 3 friends who found work in this environment, at shipyards and industries. They were loyal and trustworthy to their friends and families, but were also known to get into trouble with the police for minor crimes. Sometimes they carried surprisingly large amounts of money. They were last seen on the rainy Thursday morning of July 29, 1965, driving a midnight blue Volvo PV444 that belonged to Jan Olof Dahlsjö's brother, even though none of them had a driver's license. All 3 of them were reported missing at different times, and it took months until the police could confirm that they disappeared at the same time. They had salaries waiting for them that were never collected. All of them had girlfriends, and Kjell, the youngest, even became a father shortly before the disappearance. They had been heard to be planning on going to a camping trip together in the village of Åsa, south of Gothenburg. but the weather was especially bad that day and not suitable for camping, and they didn't tell anyone that they were leaving on that particular day. Extensive searches in and around Gothenburg have found nothing. In addition, the same day in 1965, a fourth disappearance occurred in western Sweden. The fourth person that went missing from Gothenburg that same day was Hybner Lundqvist, 18, an art student from Stockholm. He spent the summer of 1965 with his family at their summer residence in Torekov in the south of Sweden, but got bored and said that he wanted to travel to Lysekil, north of Gothenburg, where a collective of artists resided. The path to Lysekil goes through Gothenburg, and he either hitchhiked his way there or took a train. He left his family on the morning of July 29th and arrived in Gothenburg sometime during the day, where he sent a postcard to his parents that read, "All is well, don't worry." This is the last trace of him. The parents of Hybner, Lundqvist, the missing art student, always believed that he left the country to work on the high seas. 2 Swedish sailors have reported speaking with a young Swedish man of similar appearance in the late 1960s, once in Singapore and once in Australia, but these sightings have not been confirmed. The fact that Hybner Lundqvist disappeared the same day as Guy, Jan Olof, and Kjell provides speculation that both the cases are linked. But Guy Karlsson's sister does not think that the friends from Gothenburg have something to do with Hybner Lundqvist. Another very widespread theory is that the disappearances are paired with the so-called Godman's robbery that took place the same day as the 4 people disappeared. The robbery was committed by a group of friends originating in Hungary. They were all 3 much older than the other missing young people in the PV. Police, reporters, and amateur detectives have tried to connect the 2 cases for more than 50 years, but all attempts have failed. Nobody knows what happened to the 4 young men who disappeared that fateful day in 1965, and their disappearances, along with the aforementioned murders, are some of the few unsolved mysteries of Sweden.